Hello friend, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I want to show you some simple embossing. So if you have not ever tried embossing with your hand lettering, it is so fun, but it is also a way to make your hand lettering look kind of fancy. So I have these gift tags here and I am just going to do some simple embossing on these. I also like to replace this with some baker's twine. So I take these off. And then I also have some different embossing powders here. You don't need a ton, but I will show you a couple of different colors if you are curious what these look like before you purchase, if you are looking to purchase some. And then I also have this heat tool. And then I will also be using both a brush pen for embossing. And then I also have this quickie glue pen. Now, if you have seen my video on using these for foiling, I'm also going to use these similarly for embossing. So this one is going to give me a brush style of calligraphy where I have thick and thin strokes. And this one is going to give me just one thickness throughout my letters with a more mono weight style of hand lettering. I also have this black sparkle embossing powder and this white embossing powder, so I'll just give you a little example of several of these. So the colors that I have are blush pearl, lilac pearl, sage, rose gold, black sparkle, and white embossing powder. This black sparkle is really fun to do on a black paper. And so I will show you some examples of these so that you can get a feel for what those colors are. And then I also have these two different colors of gift tags. I have black and craft paper, and then I also have some white paper here to show you as well. And then optional, but sometimes nice to have on hand, are paintbrushes so that you can dust away the excess after you have poured your embossing powder, because this fine little powder can get all over. So I'm going to start with the embossing powder. Now I have this paper here, but you also need to have a paper at least available for you to dump the powder on. So I'm just going to have two pieces of paper here, even though it's a little bit hard to see. And then I'm going to be using this Zig Scroll and Brush. Now I don't use the scroll side of the Zig Scroll and Brush, but I really like the brush side, even when it comes to just regular hand lettering. If you have seen me use the Zig brushables, those are one of my favorite brush pens for hand lettering. So having a brush pen for embossing that is actually a really good brush pen is kind of a treat, because sometimes when you have products like this where maybe I have like a toner pen to do foil, it's a pen that you can use that the foil will stick to, but it's really hard to create nice hand lettering with the shape of the pen. And so even though I can get the foil to stick, it's kind of hard to get my lettering nice underneath it. So this is kind of a treat to have one that does both. Now, one of the difficult things of embossing is seeing your lettering on the paper, because this is going to be kind of clear, especially with all these bright lights. So I'm going to attempt to hand letter, and I will show you what this embossing looks like. So that is kind of hard to do some of those connections, but I attempted. I can see a little bit of color, but with the lights it's pretty hard. And I'm going to do this blush pearl color first. And we're just going to cover all of our hand lettering and then do my best to pour it back into the paper. As I can see, there are some lines there that didn't get covered, so I'm just going to do my best to get those covered. And I can already see that some of those thinner strokes are not sticking to my embossing powder. So what I'm going to do, because I don't really want to color over it with the marker while this is still wet, I am going to heat this up, and then I'm going to attempt to go back over it a second time. So you can see I was able to fill in a little bit where the embossing powder didn't stick super well the first time. And I can feel with my hands that there's a little bit of stuff here. So it's kind of a delicate balance when it comes to embossing, to make sure that you aren't shaking off all the powder so that it doesn't work. I was shaking pretty lightly the first time, so it just wasn't going to stick at all, especially after I added some more powder to it. But this time I got it to stick, so I don't want to shake it all off if I can help it. So I'm just using this little brush. It's pretty small and it has a flat edge, which is kind of helpful. And I'm just going to go ahead and heat this up again. even though this is not perfect, it still did turn out beautifully. Ideally, those strokes would stay kind of even throughout each time, but I'm going to test out another color and see if I can create a little bit better of embossing by pushing a little bit harder and lettering a little bit more slowly with this brush pen. So this is a hard thing to do because of the fact that our upstrokes, when we are doing brush lettering, we're trying to lighten up on our pressure so that we can get that really thin upstroke. So in doing that with embossing, it can make it hard because you're not actually putting a lot of the ink down onto the paper when you do that. And so we want this ink that this is going to stick to, we want it to be on that paper so that we can get that to stick to our words. And so we'll see how this one went. This should be a good test because there were a lot of those thin upstrokes. So I can see that this one stuck quite a bit better, but there are still some spots that I can see right there. So I'm gonna go through with this end of the pen and see if I can just fill those in a little tiny bit. It's not much, so there might not be much that I can do. So let me show you up close, and then you can see these beautiful colors as well. I'm trying to get the camera to do these pretty colors justice. All right, so the next one I'm going to show you is the brush pen on something like a craft or a cardstock. This is a very smooth paper, this white one that I used. It is the HP Premium 32 laser jet paper, or the HP Premium 32 paper. If you are not familiar with this paper, I use it for a lot of brush lettering because it is very, very smooth. And so this paper is not quite as smooth, and I'm going to see if maybe a little bit more textured of a paper will hang on to this a little bit better. So this one stuck a lot better. My upstrokes are not quite as thin as they were here, I don't think, at least some of them. And so that could be a reason, but let's test this one out and see. So this one seemed to work the absolute best. Now the downside is, when you're using something small like this, it is a little bit harder to hand letter using a brush pen and get your letters to be small. So that doesn't mean you can't use this kind of a paper though. You would just maybe want to grab a type of cardstock or something with a little bit more texture than this really smooth paper. So I know it is unlike me to say it, but I think that if I were to recommend what type of product you use with this type of a pen when it comes to embossing, I think I would recommend something a little bit more textured than this really smooth paper. Totally up to you though, but as you can see, the results with this one are a little bit better than that one that had a little bit of trouble sticking. So I'm gonna try this one again and just see if I can recreate those results. Actually, let's try the black cardstock. Okay, that was definitely harder to pour than the other ones for some reason. So can you see that sparkle? I have not even done the embossing powder yet, but this one is really fun, and I'm just gonna tap it off here a little bit. So it was not quite as perfect as the sage over here, but still really nice. So again, I think I'd recommend something with a little bit more texture. So beautiful. So I have two more colors, and with those ones, I'm going to show you the Quickie glue pen. So if you have not seen this Quickie glue pen before, I believe it's actually for glue, probably for maybe crafting or paper crafting. Yes, for paper crafts. I purchased this to use for foiling, and I have a tutorial on that on my channel. If you have not seen that, I will link it in the description box below. But it is a very simple way to do foiling without a foiling machine. You simply hand letter with this. You have to let it dry for a little bit, and then you put your foil over it, and it will stick to this Quickie glue. And so it is super simple but beautiful foiling. And so I can't remember if I've actually tried this for embossing, but I imagine it's going to work the same way. So I'm going to test it out. tried other embossing pens and always have a little trouble with getting them to stick. This, as you can see, it is sticking so well, and I'm gonna do it again. I'll write a little bit more, a little bit bigger here. So I hope you enjoyed these simple ways to create embossing with your hand lettering. I think it is just such a beautiful way to use your hand lettering skills, and it just looks kind of fancy, and it's just a couple extra steps when you are already doing your hand lettering. So I hope this was helpful for you. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments box below. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to learn how to hand letter, you can find my free 7-day hand lettering course at howtohandletter.com/mini course. If you are already following me on Instagram, you can find me over there at howtohandletter. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video.